every word and every act. His assurance and His love. Why fear when I am here? He said. For every devotee, He was here, there, and everywhere. Painfully guiding every step like a dance teacher. As the bud blossomed to reveal 1,000 petals, it can only be said that the fragrance of the first few years was unique.
Most often one strange thing which Swami used to do is, Swami would give a fruit or a remedy which was otherwise dangerous for that particular malady they were suffering from, so that you don't have any doubt that it is the grace which is curing. It is not the object which is given. But this is our human mind. I remember once I was talking to a friend of mine. He had a deep cut in his finger, and very religiously he put some vibhuti on it, and then he went to the kitchen, took some turmeric and put on it. So I asked him, it's either that you don't have faith in the turmeric or you don't have faith in the vibhuti. We are not sure. Like when Swami would say, I cure you, I bless you, I grace you, probably our minds are not satisfied with that. We want an object of faith. We want an object to fall back upon. And that's what Swami would do. But if today, after seeing so much, after having observed Swami for so many years, if we have these doubts, I think we can empathize with these people who had doubts with Swami's actions. Because at one point, all the villagers gathered around, all the elders, they came to Karnam Subbamma. We have spoken about her. She was almost like Mother Yashoda to Swami. And they said, what is this happening? No, who is this Satyam? What is he saying, Sai Baba? Is he really divine? How can we believe something like this? This is so atrocious. Subbamma has had her faith firmly established, as Swami used to say many times. But she decided to take this case of these elders of the village to Swami. So led by Subbamma, a small entourage goes to Swami. And they say, Swami, you have to prove your divinity to us. And Swami is sitting there in one room, and Swami looks at all these people. Children, why have you all come? And Subbamma very humbly submits to Swami that, Swami, we all seek some kind of a sign or a proof of your divinity. It's late in the evening, so Swami is having a lantern in his hand. So Swami takes few of those people into another room. Swami closes the door, and then at that very moment, the lantern goes off. And from somewhere, a very strange luminescence comes. The whole room is lit up. And that very place where Swami was sitting on a chair, they look and they see the Adisesha, the live snake which is almost touching the ceiling. And there Swami is sitting in the form of Lord Vishnu. And this is of course a bed which is in the shape of Adisesha. But what they saw was a live snake. It had opened its hood and it was hissing furiously. And these people started trembling. And they called out to Swami. Swami, they said, Swami, this is enough, don't show us anymore. And in a moment, the light vanished, the lantern was back in Swami's hand, and Swami was sitting on the chair. And immediately, with trembling limbs, with tears streaming down their eyes, all of them fell at Swami's feet. And the same Swami, who first asked them, children, what do you want? Swami saying, no, Oddu Bangaru, don't come and fall at my feet. You are all elders. You are all older to me, don't fall at my feet. This is how Swami was playing with his Maya back and forth. And in between this, we had to find our faith and have it firmly established.
Often when we speak of Maya, Prem used the word Maya, we think it's a negative thing. The Lord has put us in Maya, because of which we do not realize divinity. What we don't realize is, it is that Maya that is able to confer the joy of interaction on us. Just imagine if there was no Maya, we would not have the bliss of darshan, sparshan, sambhashan. In fact, I remember this episode, a favorite of mine, where Swami comes to the student and asks him, where did you come from? He says, Swami, you know. What is your name? Swami, you know. What are you studying? Swami, you know. Swami says, you fool, I know everything. But yesterday you prayed, Swami, please speak to me. So I am speaking to you, now answer. Swami does not speak to us to seek information from us, to give us that joy of interaction. Swami has to wear the cloak of ignorance or Maya, that we can get the joy of informing him. Swami, not only I have come, my parents have also come, my wife has also come, my sister has come. And we get a chance to talk. Imagine if that Maya is not there, we just can't speak. We'll be dumbstruck. To live in that awareness of divinity, we have to be prepared. A small bulb can't receive a voltage, 420 volt or 1000 volts, it will burst. The bulb has to be prepared, and then only can it receive that current. This veil of Maya is very, very important, so that we are able to learn and grow. And once in a while the Lord parts this Maya to show what He really is. Swami's father, Pedda Venkamaraju, had a brother, younger brother, Chinna Venkamaraju. His children, all of Swami's first cousins. In fact, this Krishnamaraju, who was fondly known as Kishtappa, he was one of Swami's cousins, and these cousins were blessed to see so many of these miracles. Pedda Venkamaraju, the father, was very nervous. He didn't know what's happening. He would lock him in a room and let him be there so that he can't go around and do all this mischief, whatever this is. But all of Swami's cousins would come, because they are very enamored. They would come to Swami to the window, and Swami began to materialize Vibhuti and give them through the window. And they would be so thrilled. They would go and tell their father, Chinna Venkamaraju, you know what, Swami gave this. And he would say, no, there's one lamp inside, from that ash he is taking and giving you. Often the children are the first ones to believe because of their innocent hearts. They said, no way. We saw him, it came out of his hand. So Chinna Venkamaraju became very curious. He went and opened the door and went in and asked, are you really doing all these? And there, Swami gave him a darshan as Shirdi Baba. And he was stunned. He came out and went to his brother, Swami's father, and he said, hey, really, I'm telling you, it is true. I saw him, he's Shirdi Baba. So he definitely opened the lock and let his son go free, but he was very scared. So Swami himself said, I shall not stay at this home anymore, don't worry. No bad luck or bad fame or bad name or complaints will come to this home. He began to stay at his father's shop. This is that little shop that his father owned. Now among Swami's foremost devotees, as we have mentioned, one was Karnam Subbamma. So Karnam Subbamma invited Swami home. The Karnam had two wives, Subbamma and Kamalamma. Subbamma had not given him any progeny, so he had married for a second time. Kamalamma too was not able to give him any progeny. But both Karnam Kamalamma and Karnam Subbamma, the two wives of Karnam Lakshmi Narayan Rao, they were great devotees of Swami, and they invited Swami home. And thus, Swami began to stay in a small room in Karnam Subbamma's palatial house. This was Karnam Subbamma's home before it was demolished, and in fact there was one little room in the house which was called Korika room. Korika meaning desire. It was the desire fulfilling room or the interview room. Swami's earliest interview room. His own room and interview room were the same. So this was another change that happened, where Swami shifted from his father's home to his father's shop before landing up at Karnam Subbamma's home.
And how this came to be was one day Swami sent word for Karnam Subbamma and Karnam Kamalamma. So they both came with traditional offerings, like when you come to see a divine personage, how you come with coconut offerings and the fruits and things like that. So they came, they offered it to Swami. Swami accepted it. They gave Swami a pair of dhoti and shirt. Still, Swami was wearing a shirt and knickers sometimes a dhoti. Swami had a bath, Swami wore those clothes. Swami offered worship to the Shirdi Baba picture which was there. And then they invited Swami for lunch, which Swami accepted. 3 or 4 days later, Swami went there. And that is when they prayed to Swami that Swami, you should probably stay here. So Swami accepted it, and as Arvind was saying, almost the entire day till late in the night Swami used to stay there. But this is a period where these two devotees were really shown to the world as epitomes of devotion, as examples of devotion. Because Swami started gathering more and more crowd. That was one of the main reasons why Swami moved to Kamalamma's and Subamma's house. And as we said, when Swami returned from Urvakonda, they used to have these Thursday bhajans. Bhajans used to be on Thursdays. But now devotees started coming on all days. So they could not wait till a Thursday for bhajans. So bhajans started happening every day. And now Swami said, devotees are coming, they're coming from so far, they can't go back. So why don't we offer prasadam? So now these two ladies started cooking prasadam for these devotees, and almost the entire day would be spent only cooking for these people who had come. And the numbers never reduced. From then on, the numbers kept increasing. And in fact, very fondly, Swami would remember in the 90s and 2000s, Swami would say, from the morning till the night, you could constantly hear the sound of the grinding of the mortar in the house. Because throughout the day, Kamalamma and Subamma would cook and cook and cook. And of course, there were many, many occasions when the food they cooked was not enough for the people who had come. And that was the first time when Swami started multiplying food. Swami would ask for 2 coconuts. We've seen it many times in the later years. Swami would break 2 coconuts together and make the food akshayam. One day, Swami called Kamalamma and Subamma, and Swami told them, you don't have any children, you don't have any progeny. I will become your child. Henceforth, I will be your son. And then Swami said, but this foster son is going to trouble you a lot. But I promise you, you will have no more births. In the Indian tradition, it is believed that the son is supposed to guarantee you this freedom from birth and death. You know, the son is prescribed to do rituals which will release you from probably an intermediary state the spirit is caught up in. That is why always, the Indian families, they yearn for a progeny. They yearn for somebody who will come and do those rituals after you're passed on. But here is Swami saying, not only will I take the place of your son, but I ensure you that henceforth you will have no more births. But as we have mentioned even in the earlier talks, Subamma was a Brahmin. And here Swami was a Bhattraju, a Kshatriya. And Swami would move freely into the house. Swami would walk right into the kitchen. He would go and tell them, so many more devotees have come, cook more. So this did not go down well with the Brahmin community. They said, how can a Kshatriya boy walk into the kitchen of a Brahmin household? And they started talking ill of Swami, ill of Subamma and Kamalamma. And Swami would say that Subamma would tell them on their face, he is not Satyam, he is not Raju, he is not a Kshatriya, Deva Devudu. He is God of all gods. I don't care for any amount of talk which goes on behind my back. He is my Lord. He has all right over all that I have. But Swami was not very happy putting her through this bad name. But that is why he put forth this thought to them, and a small thatched hut was made for Swami almost on the outside of the village. Today we are calling it the outside of the village. It probably would have been somewhere near, a little beyond where the Hanuman temple is there today.
I feel that is a promise, possibly not as a foster son, but that is a promise that the Lord has made to each one of us. Swami tells us that, dear one, I have come into your life, I will give you some troubles. But you don't worry, I will take care of your redemption. I am not giving you trouble because I am a sadist and I want to torture you. I am giving you those troubles because you have no idea that's all good for you. See, when you do push-ups, your hand aches, and yet you go and do push-ups. Why? Because you say, my hand may ache, but it builds my muscles. That is what is happening at the bodily level. Same thing happens at the level of the spirit. Anything that gives you pain and difficulty builds you. That is why Kunti of yore told Krishna, Lord, fill my life with troubles so that every time I think of you and I grow. So, that is the difference between divine love and human love. Human love thinks that when I love somebody, I have to keep their body and mind happy. But the Lord's love is ready to sacrifice the body and the mind at the altar of the soul, because it is concerned only with the soul. And that is the promise that Swami has told each one of us. So whenever we have those little difficult times, let us remember Swami telling us, dear one, you are mine. I will give you lots of trouble, but don't worry, I will take care of your redemption. I think that sentence is something we can all treasure. We had spoken about how Swami had thrown jasmine flowers which formed the letter Sai Baba. When the followers of one P.T. Krishnamachari, this P.T. Krishnamachari residing in Penukonda was a scholar who had actually done the Aksharabhyasam or initiation into writing for Swami. This P.T. Krishnamachari would pose like a Baba himself, have devotees, give Udi Vibhuti to everyone. So his followers had felt hurt and they had come and challenged. And at that time Swami had thrown jasmine flowers. It formed Sai Baba and they went back dumbstruck. It is said, Mukam karoti vachalam, means the Lord can make the dumb man speak. But the opposite also holds true. Vachalam karoti mukam. A person who keeps yapping, the Lord can make him dumbstruck and silence him forever. That is what had happened to these people. But this Krishnamachari, P.T. Krishnamachari was not satisfied. His followers had given up, but he himself came. And when he came, he's a big shot, he's a big person. And the father was very terrified. So he went to his son and told him, see, I don't know, whatever you do, but don't get into trouble like this. Now you know who has come. P.T. Krishnamachari has come. And he's asking who you are. Now, why do you get into such trouble? And Swami tells his father, do you want to know who I am? Come. He takes him inside one room and he says, see there, can you see? Can you see my place? And the father sees a Google Earth view. I don't think Google existed then, but he sees a panoramic view of the entire Shirdi. And Swami points out, see the Margosa tree, see the mandir, see Dwarka Mai. Oh my God, and he is just stunned, he is just amazed. He can't believe. See, a photograph of Shirdi Baba, maybe it has been planted before. But this kind of a 3D hologram where the entire Shirdi is recreated, he's stunned and he says, oh my God, you are Baba. He says, don't worry. Come, experience for yourself, then have faith. I don't want your faith free. But once you have faith, don't keep shaking. Whoever has come with doubt, send them in. And thus, P.T. Krishnamachari is led in. And then the other people who had come, one by one, they all go in. They all enter in a huff, come back meek, with hands folded. And then the father tells, nobody should disturb Satyam anymore. He is not Satyam. He is Baba. He is divine. In fact, though she did not have a doubt, later on even Ishwaramma got a chance to experience this when she heard footsteps of a large person, a large built person, and she saw a kafni. And Swami told her that Shirdi Baba has come. So these were the incidents that conclusively proved for his own family, because Swami now knew that at a physical level he needed support from his family members, because there will be a lot of devotees coming.
Maybe before we talk about the devotees starting to come to Parthi, I'm reminded of what one of our lecturers once shared with us. Swami was giving a discourse in the Institute auditorium, and as usual there was a translator, and Swami said these words, you can wake up a person who's sleeping. So translator translated. Then Swami went on to say, but you cannot wake up a person who's sleeping and he's thinking he's awake. So the translator thought that Swami got the usual saying wrong. So he corrected it and translated. He said, but you cannot wake up a person who's pretending to be asleep. Okay? Swami said, no, I did not say that. And Swami repeated again, you cannot wake up a person who is asleep and he's thinking he's awake. How profound is that? That rationale which we have, the reasoning which we have is like a peanut, but we hold it close to our eye and the mountain looks small in front of the peanut. That's what we do when we are trying to reason out what Swami is. Because one day Swami gathered a few people in the village in noontime, bright sunlight. We know Parthi, they say there is no winter in Parthi. There's only summer, super summer and super summer. There is no winter, autumn, spring. In such a Parthi, at noontime, Swami takes these people outside and Swami says, Chudu, Swami shows the sky and they see bright stars. The stars which you can see only in a dark night, they see it at noontime. And few are aghast, few are like thrilled with the experience, but some, they shrug their shoulders and walk away. They say, you know what, geographically the stars are always there. It's just that we cannot see them. Sometimes we can see them. What kind of a reasoning is this? But this is what we do when we don't want to believe. As Swami said, if you are asleep and you imagine to be awake, nobody can help you. Even God cannot help you. Right? That's the word Swami said. Even God cannot help a person who is asleep and imagines to be awake.
Of course, compared to a hill station, Puttaparthi is still hot. But it has changed so much. This shows that consciousness in everything responds. When Swami was born, the hill on which we have Kalpavriksha today was barren. Kalpavriksha was the only tree there. Today you stand down, you can't see Kalpavriksha. It is so green. In fact, you can go to Google Earth and see an aerial view of Puttaparthi. It is so green. Why I mentioned about this Puttaparthi changing is because the miracles which happen quickly, like seeing stars in the daytime, we recognize and we admire them as miracles. But we forget the miracles which take 10 years to happen, which take 20 years to happen. When a person who is dying is resurrected, we consider it a miracle. Every day we are alive, we miss to see the miracle. On the day when we have floods and homes are destroyed and our home is standing, we say it's a miracle of the Lord, my home is standing. Daily, dear brothers and sisters, our home is standing, but do we express gratitude to the Lord? Things that happen over a larger span of time, we don't think it's a miracle. But those are the kind of miracles that are happening in Puttaparthi. Possibly one more example I'll give. Swami, there was this group that had come from Kamalapuram, one of the towns where Swami had studied. They also heard, that boy who had studied here, apparently he's God, it seems. Come, let's go, we'll see. They had a very interesting experience where Swami was lying down and when they came, he told, come. And he made them put their ears on his chest. What a beautiful opportunity it is. I think that was a symbolic way of Swami saying that you are all very close to my heart. And the magical thing was, when they put their ear, they couldn't hear the heartbeat of the Lord. Because the heartbeat of the Lord is the heartbeat of the universe. But what they heard were the beautiful notes of the flute that Krishna played. And even as they heard those notes, in their mind's eye, immediately, what came without any effort, was the vision of the banks of Yamuna, where Krishna did his Rasa Leela.